The day my daughter betrayed me, I was sitting in a waiting room that smelled like Lysol and old magazines. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I remember the exact shade of green on those plastic chairs, like something out of a hospital in the 70s. That's when my phone rang. It was Dana, my only child, my daughter, the girl I raised alone after her father left when she was 6. Her voice sounded off, not like her usual chirpy, performative sweetness. No, this voice was colder, detached. "Mom, we're going to Prague tomorrow. Just letting you know I sold the lake cottage and your car. We needed the money. Bye." That was it. She hung up. I sat there in stunned silence, the phone still pressed to my ear long after the line went dead. People around me kept coughing, flipping through dog-eared magazines, waiting for their names to be called. I didn't cry. Not then. Maybe I should have. But instead, I felt something shift inside. Something subtle but final, like a door closing quietly behind you. My name is Lillian Carter. I'm 68 years old, and I thought I knew my daughter, until that moment. 3 months earlier, I buried my second husband, Mark. We were married for 31 years. He passed suddenly during breakfast. He just made cinnamon toast for both of us and poured me my usual decaf with half and half. He kissed my temple like he did every morning, said, "Looks like a sunny one, Lil." And 2 minutes later, his heart just gave out. Since then, Dana had been showing up more. She brought groceries, helped with the memorial service, took me to doctor's appointments I never would have scheduled otherwise. "You've got to take care of yourself now, Mom," she kept saying. I thought it was love. Turned out it was logistics. The lake cottage she sold was in Madison Lake, a tiny old place Mark and I had fixed up over the years. Peeling paint, crooked porch, but it had soul. We bought it back when Dana was in high school, when money was tight and we needed a getaway that didn't involve airfare. Every 4th of July, every Thanksgiving when we wanted to escape town, we went there. Dana brought friends, boyfriends, then her husband Kyle. I cooked, cleaned, made beds. I never once complained. It was our family escape. I thought it meant something to her. I really did. The car, an old silver Camry, wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Mark bought it for me after my cancer scare 12 years ago. He said, "It's not fancy, Lil, but it'll always get you home." I hadn't driven it much since he passed, but still, selling it felt like an erasure. Dana knew that. She knew all of it, and yet she sold them both, casually, as if she were pawning off knickknacks. But here's what she didn't know. 3 days before he died, Mark handed me a thick white envelope. No label, no explanation, just, "Put this in your nightstand. Open it when you're ready." Grief makes time blurry. I had forgotten all about it, until now. Back at home, I went straight to my bedroom. The drawer stuck a little, like it always did. But there it was, exactly where he said it would be. The envelope. It was heavier than I remembered. I sat on the edge of the bed we'd shared for 3 decades and slowly peeled it open. There were documents, dozens of them, bank statements, stock certificates, trust deeds, and at the top, a handwritten letter in his careful, looping penmanship. "My Lil, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if Dana's already done something foolish, don't be surprised. I've been preparing for this for a long time." I stared at those words for a long time, the heat rising in my chest. I turned the page and kept reading. "There's more, Lil. More than you know. I've been investing quietly for years. Stocks, mutual funds, even some real estate. The cabin wasn't our only property. And you're not broke, sweetheart, not even close. It's all in your name. Trust me, I took care of you." I sat there for hours going through it all. I couldn't believe it. 6 properties. Some I didn't even recognize. A storage unit in Mankato holding what? I had no idea. A bank account in my name with more zeros than I'd ever seen. And just like that, Dana's betrayal turned into something else entirely. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was clear. I let her think I was powerless, let her take what she thought was mine. But I still had one thing she never expected, the truth, and time. You see, I'm not interested in revenge for revenge's sake. That's not me. But I do believe in consequences, in education, in dignity. And my daughter? She was about to get all three. The next morning, I brewed coffee the way Mark liked it. Strong, dark, no sugar. The way I used to hate, but learned to love. I sat in the kitchen and opened the envelope again, laying out everything like a puzzle. Deeds, shareholder agreements, some kind of quiet ownership of a business supply warehouse on the edge of town. His signature was on every page. Mark had been careful, private, maybe even secretive, but never dishonest. He just didn't want me to worry. And Dana, she had no idea. All she saw was a widowed mother, alone in a modest 2-bedroom house with a paid-off car and a dusty lakeside cabin. She probably assumed the savings account we shared was all there was, but Mark had always used that account for the visible stuff, the grocery money, the utility bills, the vacation fund. The rest he'd hidden in plain sight, legal, protected, smart. I picked up his letter again. Lil, I didn't want Dana to know about this while I was alive. You know her. If she caught wind that there was real money behind the curtain, she'd start sniffing around with that same look she gave us when she wanted braces, or prom money, or a loan for their first house. I didn't want her to see us as a bank. I wanted her to see us as parents. I had to laugh, even through the tears. He knew her too well. I folded everything back neatly, made a second cup of coffee, and started a list. I needed someone who could help me translate all this, an accountant, a lawyer, or maybe both. I remembered Mark used to mention a guy from his poker group, a lawyer who handled estate planning and business transitions. Clyde Thorne, lived over in Brainerd, but kept an office on Main Street. I found his number in Mark's old address book, which I'd almost thrown out after the funeral. Funny how grief makes you want to erase, and then how wisdom tells you to wait. "Mr. Thorne's office," said a warm voice when I called. "How can we help you today?" "My name's Lillian Carter. My late husband was Mark Carter. He told me once to reach out to Mr. Thorne if I ever needed guidance with things he left behind." A pause. Then, "Yes, of course. I remember Mark. Quiet guy. Good instincts. When can you come in?" We scheduled an appointment for the next day. That evening, Dana called again. For a moment, I considered not picking up, but curiosity got the better of me. "Mom?" Her voice was chipper, too chipper. "How are you settling in without the cottage? I figured it was too much upkeep for you anyway." Upkeep. That was her new word for memories, apparently. "I'm fine, Dana. I sent you the link to a few apartment listings I found. Smaller, more manageable. Kyle thinks the one near the grocery store would be perfect. Ground level, no stairs." How thoughtful of him. "You sound off, Mom. Everything okay?" "Oh, I'm just tired." "Long day at the clinic." "You didn't tell me you had an appointment." "I didn't think you were keeping track." A silence on the line. She didn't like that. Not one bit. "Well, just let me know if you need help moving. We'll be in Prague for a few weeks, but Kyle's cousin could swing by." "That won't be necessary." "Mom, I'm only trying to help. I know change is hard for you." That last sentence nearly did it. I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing, or screaming. I couldn't decide which. After we hung up, I sat in the dark living room with nothing but the ticking of the wall clock and the creak of the old radiator. Outside, the streetlight buzzed like a tired mosquito. I looked around at the room Dana wanted me to trade in for something smaller, more manageable. She didn't know a damn thing about what I could manage. The next morning, I dressed carefully. Navy slacks, a cream blouse, a cardigan with pearl buttons Mark had bought me from a boutique up north. Not fancy, but respectable. That's how I wanted to feel when I walked into Clyde Thorne's office. Not pitiful, not powerless, just grounded. Clyde's office was over the bakery on Main in a building with faded red awnings and crooked wooden steps. When I walked in, I smelled fresh donuts and lemon floor polish. "Mrs. Carter," he said, standing to shake my hand. "Mark was a good man. I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you. He told me to come see you if anything happened." We got down to business. I showed him the envelope, the papers, the letter. His eyebrows shot up. "Well," he said, flipping through the deeds, "Mark didn't waste his time, did he? These are all clean, legit. And from what I see here, you're sitting on close to $1 million in assets, Mrs. Carter. Maybe more, depending on how the warehouse is performing." I nodded slowly. I didn't need the number. I needed the options. "I don't want to go after Dana, not with lawyers, not with threats." He leaned back. "All right. But I do want my properties back. The lake cottage, the car. I want everything she sold returned, quietly, if possible." "Can do, especially if the transactions were made under false pretenses. That'll take some wrangling, but it's possible. As for the Camry, do you know who she sold it to?" "No idea. She never told me." "I'll look into it. In the meantime, let's get everything else secured under your name, properly, publicly, but without making too much noise." "Exactly." He smiled. "You've got a plan, don't you?" I gave him the smallest smile back. "I do." That evening, as I left his office and stepped into the cooling dusk, I felt like someone else entirely. Not a woman who'd been discarded, not a mother to be pitied, but a woman who knew something no one else did. The first card had been played, and my daughter? She was still dancing blind. I started keeping a notebook, a plain spiral-bound thing from the Dollar General with a robin's egg blue cover and a rip near the bottom where the plastic coating had peeled. I labeled the first page in all caps, "The Ledger." Not for numbers, really, more like moments, truths, names I needed to remember, calls I needed to make, things Dana had said in passing that didn't feel like much at the time, but now took on new weight. Page 1 had 4 entries. 1. April 12th. We needed the money. 2. Sold Lake House to Marsh Properties. Look into them. 3. Power of attorney papers. Signed Feb as 3. Why? 4. Call Clyde, Zekier. Truck, location. The power of attorney thing had started to nag at me. I remembered signing something after the funeral. Dana had brought a folder, said it was just paperwork to help close out Mark's accounts and settle the estate. I'd been so fogged with grief I didn't even ask questions, but Clyde confirmed it. She had you sign over a limited power of attorney for property and title transfers, he told me. The forms were legal. Barely. It'll be tricky to prove coercion, but not impossible. I asked him if it was worth the fight. He said, "Only if you want to make this a war." I didn't. I wanted something slower, quieter. Something Dana wouldn't even realize was happening until it was too late. Clyde got to work right away. Over the next 2 weeks, he managed to reverse the lake property sale through a loophole. Apparently, Marsh Properties had a clause that required full spousal consent, which Dana didn't have. The title reverted back to me without a hitch. The Camry was harder. Turned out Dana sold it privately to a mechanic out in St. Peter. But Clyde, being the old poker player he was, made a call and arranged a deal. The mechanic was happy to trade it back in exchange for a better used car Clyde sourced from a client. And just like that, the car was mine again. It was almost embarrassing how easily it all unraveled, how quickly I could undo what she thought was final, like pulling thread from a poorly sewn hem. In the meantime, Dana went dark. No calls, no texts, just an email about a week after our last conversation. Arrived in Prague, jet-lagged but excited. Kyle's cousin knows a guy who can get us into a startup deal. We'll send photos. Love you. I stared at the love you part for a long time, wondered if she meant it, wondered if she ever had. The silence gave me space to think, to feel. At first it was anger. I'd trusted her, loved her so hard it left me hollow, and in return, she sliced through 30 years of motherhood like it was nothing, like I was nothing. Then came the shame, not hers, mine. How had I not seen this coming? How had I let her get so entitled, so cold? What part of me had raised a daughter who could take and never look back? But by the end of week 3, something steadier settled in. Resolve. Not to punish, not even to expose. Just to teach. If Dana was going to abandon me for a lie, I would show her the truth, inch by inch, without ever raising my voice. I would let her walk herself into a corner, and when she looked up and realized where she was, I'd already be standing at the only exit. One afternoon, Clyde called with another update. "Lil, you're now sole listed beneficiary of all 6 properties. They're in a holding trust under your name. I've also secured a lien against the apartment Kyle and Dana owned." Turns out, surprise, surprise, they used it as collateral on a European business loan, one that's already defaulted. They're not even back from Europe. Nope, but the banks don't care. What happens next? If no payment is made, the unit will go into foreclosure within 90 days. But here's the kicker. Since the original mortgage holder is actually your trust, set up by Mark under a shell LLC, you're legally allowed to intervene as owner and recover the property. I blinked. So I can evict them? Technically, yes, but there's a smarter way. I'm listening. Let the bank send the default notice. Let Dana come home and panic. And when she calls you, act surprised. Let her ask for help. Then, give her exactly what she gave you. Kindness with strings, compassion with cost. I smiled for the first time in days, not because I wanted revenge, but because the symmetry of it all was too perfect. That evening, I stood in the garage and ran my hand along the Camry's hood. The smell inside still held faint traces of Mark, his pine tree air freshener, the worn leather of the driver's seat, the notepad he kept in the glove box for jotting down errands. I opened it. There was a half-scribbled note on the first page. "Lil, remind me to get salt for the walkway. Love you." Salt for the walkway. He must have written it the week before he died. Grief is a funny thing. You think you've cried all the tears you can, and then a scrap of handwriting breaks you all over again. I sat in the driver's seat and just breathed for a while. This was my house, my car, my name on every deed, every account. Dana thought she'd left me with nothing, but now I had everything. And soon I would decide how much, if any, she would ever see again. 3 weeks after Dana's cheerful "We're in Prague" email, she called me crying. Not a few sniffles, real crying. Gut-level, gasping sobs like she used to do when she scraped her knees as a kid. The kind that made me instinctively reach for a dish towel to dry my hands and go find her. "Mom," she sobbed, "it's bad. It's really, really bad." I stayed quiet. Let her fill the silence. Kyle's gone. He took the money, all of it. There was no startup, no Czech cousin, no business anything. It was all fake. She inhaled shakily. I woke up 2 mornings ago and he was just gone. Left a note. Said he needed space to figure things out. Took my passport, my laptop, even the credit cards. A part of me wanted to scream, "I told you so," but I didn't. I just waited. "And the worst part?" she said, her voice lower now, almost flat. "The apartment. The one we lived in, it's in foreclosure. I got a notice from the bank this morning. They're seizing the property, and I found out we weren't even the real owners." Something about a shell company or, "Mom, I don't understand any of it, do you?" I wanted to say, "Oh, I understand more than you think." But I kept my voice calm. "I'm so sorry, honey. Where are you now?" "In the airport in Frankfurt, trying to get a standby ticket home. I'm using my emergency cash, the only thing Kyle didn't manage to steal." "You come straight here when you land. Don't worry about anything else." There was a pause. Like she didn't believe what I'd just said. "You still want me to come?" "Of course." She hung up after thanking me 6 times, her voice cracking every time she said, "I'm sorry." She'd finally hit bottom, and that's exactly where I needed her to be. That evening, I poured myself a glass of Riesling, turned on the porch light, and opened the notebook again. Page 7 now. June 4th. Dana coming back. Kyle gone. Apartment foreclosed. Prepare guest room. Act surprised. Don't gloat. Not yet. I cleaned her old bedroom before she arrived, washed the sheets, set a lamp on the nightstand, left a glass of water and a box of tissues, the same things I used to leave out when she was sick in high school. She arrived the next evening looking 10 years older, hair matted from travel, eyes hollow. She dropped her bag inside the door and stood there like a stray cat, unsure if it was welcome. "Hi, Mom." I opened my arms. She walked into them like she was trying not to cry again. Her shoulders shook. I didn't say a word. That night she barely ate, picked at the soup I made, sat curled on the couch, wrapped in a throw blanket from Mark's recliner. "I don't know who I am anymore," she said softly. "You're my daughter, but I don't deserve to be." I didn't argue, just let her sit in that truth. Over the next few days, she slept more than I'd ever seen. Only left the house once, to walk to the grocery store and back. Said she needed fresh air, came home with 2 bananas and a box of generic tea. "I don't want to be a burden," she said. "You're not." "Yes, I am. I took everything you had and turned it into nothing." Again, I didn't correct her. Let her sit in it. Because that shame, that awareness, was the only thing strong enough to build something new on. Clyde and I stayed in touch. He had news. "The evidence against Kyle is solid," he said. "The money trail, the fake company documents, even an IP trace showing he spoofed emails to make the startup look real. We can report him." "Not yet," I said. "Let him disappear. I want him gone, not jailed." "You're being generous." "No, I'm being strategic." Angela, my neighbor across the street, stopped me one morning as I checked the mail. "Is that Dana I saw coming out your front door yesterday?" "It is." She looked thin, tired. "She's going through something." Angela leaned in, lowering her voice. "People talk, Lillian, about the house sale, the car, what she did to you. Let them talk. You sure you want her back under your roof?" "She's my daughter." Angela narrowed her eyes. "Still, there's forgiving, and then there's forgetting." I nodded. "I'm not forgetting." She studied me a moment, then said, "Good, because neither is God." That night, Dana cooked dinner. Stir-fry. Nothing fancy, but the gesture meant something. "I'll find a job," she said. "I already checked the library. They're not hiring, but there's a janitorial service that needs night cleaners." I looked at her. Really looked. This was not the girl who had barked orders from her townhouse patio while Kyle grilled steaks. This was someone different, someone uncertain, a little broken, but finally paying attention. And for the first time since Mark died, I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt ready. The next morning, she came to me with something unexpected. "Mom, I found this in my suitcase. I think it was in Kyle's stuff. It has your name on it." It was another envelope. My name in Mark's handwriting, but different from the first, smaller, less formal. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a note and a key. "Lil, if you're reading this after the first envelope, it means Dana's made a mess of things. This key opens a safety deposit box at First National, box 118. Use it if she ever comes back, but only after she's learned what needs learning. Mark." Dana read the note aloud, then looked at me. "Do you know what it is?" "No," I lied. "Should we go find out?" "Tomorrow." She nodded. There was hope in her face. Just a flicker, a belief that maybe, just maybe, there was something left to be salvaged. She didn't know yet, but she was right. The next morning, we rode the bus together like we had when she was in middle school, her backpack full of library books, my purse full of wet wipes and coupons. Only now we were both women, both quiet, both lost in thought. She sat by the window, I sat beside her. She kept fiddling with the sleeve of her cardigan, twisting it into a knot, then letting go. "Do you think it's money?" she asked. "I have no idea," I said, which wasn't quite a lie. I didn't know exactly what Mark had tucked away in that deposit box, but I had a good guess. "You think Dad knew this would happen?" she asked. "No, I think he hoped it wouldn't." She stared out the window for the next few blocks. The bank sat on the corner of Main and Grove, its gray stone facade unchanged since the 50s. Inside, a young teller directed us to the vault corridor. I showed my ID, signed the ledger, and followed the assistant manager to box 118. The key slid in easily. Inside was a thick black envelope taped shut. No jewelry, no stacks of cash. I handed it to Dana. "You open it." She looked surprised, but obeyed. She pulled out a folded letter and a thick sheaf of papers clipped together. As she read the letter, her mouth opened slightly, her brow furrowed. She handed it to me, speechless. I read it slowly. "Lil, this box is for the day you need to help Dana, but not just with a checkbook. Inside is everything you'll need to clear her name. Documents, signatures, proof that Kyle used her identity to take out loans. I kept copies. I did my homework. If she ever wakes up to what she's become, you'll be ready to help her start over. But don't use this too early. She has to want it. She has to change first. Love you always, Mark." I looked at Dana. Her eyes were wide. "He knew," she whispered. "He always did," I said. Back home, we spread the documents across the kitchen table. Proof of fraudulent loans, Kyle's forged emails, even a copy of Dana's signature compared to Kyle's fakes. She picked up one paper, then another. "He used my name to borrow money from a credit union in Duluth. I've never even been to Duluth." "I know," I said gently. "I thought I was the one who ruined everything." "You made your mistakes, honey," I said. "But Kyle didn't just let you fall. He pushed you." She exhaled slowly. "Can we fix it?" "I already have someone working on it." "You do?" "Yes." "Who?" "Doesn't matter right now. What matters is whether you're ready to be helped." Dana looked down at her hands, then back at me. "I'm ready," she said. "I'm finally ready." That afternoon, I called Clyde. "She's seen the papers. She's ready." He didn't ask what I meant by ready. He just said, "I'll move things forward." And he did. He submitted the evidence to the local banks and began the process of removing Dana from the debts Kyle had left behind. It would take a few weeks, but it was happening. The night after our visit to the bank, Dana made dinner again. Not fancy. Mac and cheese, green beans, cornbread from a box. But it was hers. She set the table, lit a candle, sat across from me like she had something to say. "I think I'm going to keep the cleaning job," she said. "You don't have to." "I know, but I want to. I need to keep doing something that reminds me of where I've been. Something that makes me feel like I'm earning my life back." I nodded. "That makes sense." "And I've been thinking, maybe I could take some night classes. Community college has a social work program. I could help other women who've been where I was." I felt a quiet wave move through me. Pride. Hope. Something fragile and bright. "That sounds like a good plan." We ate in silence for a while. Then she spoke again. "You know what the worst part is?" "What?" "I didn't just lose my money or my marriage. I lost who I thought I was, and I lost you." "You didn't lose me." "Yes, I did. You were always there, and I treated you like an obstacle, like something to manage." I shook my head. "No, Dana, you didn't lose me. You just stopped seeing me. There's a difference." She nodded slowly. Her voice broke a little. "I see you now, Mom. I really do." That night, I stood by the window and watched the porch light cast long shadows across the lawn. It was the same light Mark used to change every November, like clockwork. He'd drag out the ladder and mutter about the socket, always refusing to let me help. "Some things are mine to do," he'd say. I understood that now. Helping Dana wasn't about saving her. It was about letting her do the hard part herself, but still being here, still being her mother, still turning on the porch light so she could find her way back. The next Monday, Dana came into the kitchen with a new kind of energy. Her hair was pulled back, her eyes clearer, jaw set. "I registered for classes," she said. "Intro to social work, 2 nights a week starting next month." I raised an eyebrow, half expecting her to say she was kidding, but she wasn't. "They're not expensive," she added quickly. "I'll use what I've saved from the cleaning job. I don't want to use your money." I sipped my coffee and nodded. "I think it's a good choice." She paused, waiting for more. Maybe praise, maybe permission. "I'm proud of you," I added. That did it. She exhaled and smiled. Not a flashy grin, but something real. Settled. Over the next few days, our rhythm fell into something close to normal. She worked nights, studied during the day, made lists of groceries and cheap recipes. She cleaned the kitchen without being asked. She offered to pay for half the utility bill. I let her. One evening, she sat across from me with a notebook of her own. "Mom, can I ask you something?" Always. "How did you get through all of it?" "Losing Dad. Then what I did to you. Being alone." I stirred honey into my tea and thought carefully before answering. "Grief does something strange," I said. "It slows the world down, turns everything into a kind of soup. You can't see where things begin or end. You just float in it for a while." She listened. "And then one day, you bump into something solid. A memory, a letter, a feeling. Something that reminds you of who you were before the loss, and you hang on to that." She was quiet a moment, then, "For me, I think it was Mrs. Katz." "Who's that?" "She cleans the 5th floor offices, mid-60s, one arm a little twisted from an old injury. She told me her husband left her when she was pregnant. She raised 3 boys alone, worked night shifts for decades." "She told you all that?" "She said it while handing me a mop." Dana smiled, "like it was just another fact, like the weather." "She sounds strong." "She is. She also said something I haven't stopped thinking about." "What was that?" "She said, the world won't save you, but you can still save yourself. And if you're lucky, someone will leave the porch light on while you do." I didn't say anything. I just reached across the table and took her hand. Dana began carrying herself differently after that. She walked straighter, talked less, and when she laughed, it wasn't nervous. It had weight. Word started to spread in our little town, as word always does, that Dana Carter was back, that she was different, that she was working a night job and taking classes, that she had moved back in with her mother, not out of failure, but maybe something like redemption. Angela from across the street came by again, this time with a plate of lemon bars. "I owe you an apology," she said. "For what?" "For assuming the worst. For thinking Dana was a lost cause." I smiled. "I never said she wasn't." Angela looked surprised. "She was a lost cause, Angela. But lost doesn't mean gone. It just means someone needs to stop and look." She set the plate on my kitchen counter and said, "She's lucky to have you." That night, after Dana left for her shift, I opened my notebook again. Page 14. Dana enrolled in classes. Still cleaning at night. Speaks with clarity now, not desperation. Porch light still on. A few days later, Clyde called. "Lillian, we've wrapped up the case. Dana's name is cleared. Banks have withdrawn all liens. Edward, sorry, Kyle, is officially on the no-fly list and wanted for identity fraud. France may or may not extradite. Doesn't matter now." "Thank you, Clyde." "You want me to tell her?" "No, I will." I waited until the weekend. A Sunday morning, calm and bright. I made pancakes like I used to when she was little and had big news to share. Over breakfast, I slid the folder across the table. She looked confused, then cautious. "What's this?" "Everything," I said. She opened it. Read silently. Her eyes widened. "You cleared it?" I nodded. "But how? This would have cost—" "I took care of it." She leaned back, put the papers down. Tears welled up, but she didn't let them fall this time. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "You didn't." She looked up at me, startled. "You didn't deserve it then," I said, "but you do now. You earned this, Dana, not because of the mistake, but because of how you've handled what came after." She nodded slowly. "I'm going to finish the semester, then apply to the certificate program, maybe find an internship." "I think that's a good idea. And I want to pay you back, every penny." "That's not necessary." "It is, for me." I didn't argue. We each need to define our own dignity. Hers now included repayment. Mine never required it. That afternoon, we sat on the porch sipping iced tea. The trees rustled like they were whispering secrets only widows understand. Dana looked out at the lawn. "I think Dad would be proud of you." I didn't correct her, but I knew the truth. He'd be proud of her too. By mid-July, the air was thick with that heavy, sweet Midwest heat, the kind that made the porch boards sweat and the iced tea sweat even harder. Dana's night shifts were steady now, and her mood had shifted into something like quiet grit. No more self-pity, no more frantic apologies, just work, class, sleep, repeat. She had found a rhythm. One Thursday afternoon, she came into the kitchen and dropped a worn folder on the table. "This is for you," she said. "My finances, everything I've got. I want to be transparent." I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because I never was before. And because this house may be your home, but I live here too, and I don't want to be a guest anymore." I opened the folder. Inside, a list of debts she had already paid with her job money and the jewel proceeds, a basic budget. Her plan to repay me in monthly installments. "This is very adult of you." She laughed. "I'm trying. You don't need to pay rent." "I want to. I need to. It's part of owning what I broke." There was a dignity to it I didn't want to strip from her, even if I had no intention of cashing her checks. I nodded and closed the folder. That same day, Clyde called again. I could hear the smile in his voice before he even spoke. "Well, Lil, looks like your daughter's story has inspired someone." "Oh?" "One of the bank managers involved in the lien case, her sister's in a domestic violence shelter, said she was so moved by Dana's recovery that she wants to partner with a local group to fund scholarships for women in similar situations." That's something. She also asked if you'd ever consider turning the lake cottage into a short-term transitional house, said she'd help with zoning and licensing. I sat down. The idea hit me harder than I expected. The lake house, our lake house, had been a symbol of betrayal for so long. The loss of it, the recovery, the ache. Could it really be something more? "Let me think about it," I told Clyde, but I already knew. That evening, I brought it up to Dana while we folded laundry together in the den. "Would you ever consider letting the cottage be used as a place for women to stay while they get back on their feet?" She looked up, surprised. "You mean not sell it?" "No, use it." She didn't speak right away, just stared down at the towel she was folding. "That house meant everything to us once," she said, "and then I ruined it." "No," I said gently. "You made a mistake. You sold it, but it's not ruined." She nodded slowly. "Then yes, let's do it. If someone else can heal there, it's worth it." We called it Second Porch. Dana came up with the name. "It's about second chances," she said, "and the light that's still on when you come home, even if you don't think you deserve it." We worked with Clyde and the city to set up a fund. I put in the seed money quietly. Mark's investments, always tucked away for someday. We partnered with a local women's resource center and made the lake cottage available for 3-month stays, complete with job assistance, therapy referrals, and child-friendly spaces. And Dana volunteered as the intake coordinator on weekends. It gave her purpose, and it gave her something else, too, something she never said aloud, but I saw it every time we drove out there: closure. One Sunday evening, after meeting with a new resident, she stood on the back deck looking out at the water. "I hated this porch for a while," she admitted. "Why?" "Because I imagined you sitting here after I sold it, alone. I imagined the pain I caused, the things I'd taken. It haunted me. And now I see a place where I can give something back." I put my hand on her shoulder. "Your father would be proud." She didn't answer right away, then said, "He always saw the best in people, didn't he?" "No," I said. "He saw everything. He just chose to love anyway." That night, we lit a candle and left it on the windowsill. A new tradition. One candle, always burning, even when no one was home, just in case someone out there was still walking toward the light. Later, back at the house, I found Dana asleep on the sofa with her class binder open beside her. Her hand rested on a page titled "Ethics in Crisis Support." She had highlighted a sentence in yellow. Empathy is not rescuing. It's remembering what it feels like to drown and choosing to sit beside someone until they find the shore. I tucked the blanket around her and turned off the lamp. Outside, the porch light was still glowing, and I let it. Late summer slipped into September, and our small town shifted with it. Porch mums replacing petunias, high school marching bands rehearsing on distant fields, and the smell of wood smoke making its quiet return to the air. Dana's class schedule got heavier, her under-eye circles darker, but she didn't complain. Not once. She worked nights, studied afternoons, and spent Sundays at the lake cottage with the women from Second Porch. And she smiled more, not the brittle, performative smile she'd worn in her old life. This one had softness, weight, something earned. I saw it most clearly one Thursday afternoon. She came home holding a manila envelope. "This came to the shelter," she said. "One of the women we helped sent it." I looked at the return address, somewhere in Sioux Falls. Dana opened the envelope and pulled out a photo, a young mother and her son, standing on the lake cottage steps, holding a thank you sign. "She got her own apartment," Dana said. "She's working at a bakery now. And her son started kindergarten last week." She handed me the photo. "You did that," she said. "No," I said. "You did." The next morning, as I swept the front porch, Angela from across the street called out from her garden. "Lillian, I heard about your little project. That lake place?" "Yes." "My niece works at City Hall. She said it's all the talk. You've got permits, funding, even a waiting list. Everyone wants to know who started it." I smiled. "Let them guess." Angela narrowed her eyes. "You always were better at quiet power than any of us." I didn't argue. I didn't have to. That afternoon, Clyde came by for tea. He brought a bottle of red wine, a thank you for referring him to half the town for wills and property issues. "You've changed this place, you know," he said, pouring 2 glasses. "People are talking about Second Porch like it's the best idea to come out of this county since roadside pie stands." I chuckled. "That's a high bar." "Seriously, you've created something with roots. It's not just a shelter, it's dignity." I didn't say anything, just took a sip. He leaned in a little. "How's Dana?" "Busy, stronger than I've ever seen her." He nodded. "You did right by her." I met his eyes. "She had to want it first." "That's the hardest part, isn't it?" he said. "Loving someone enough to let them fall, and then loving them more by not cushioning the landing." That night, Dana came home from class carrying a box. "What's that?" I asked. She opened it slowly. Inside, Mark's old fishing tackle, his watch, a faded flannel shirt, and a few Polaroids. She had gone through the storage unit near the warehouse property, one we hadn't touched since before he died. "I thought I was ready," she said. I reached for the photo on top. It was Mark at the lake, holding up a string of bluegill, smiling like he'd just won the lottery. "I didn't realize how much I missed him," Dana whispered. "Grief is like that," I said. "It hides behind busyness, then it slips in through the cracks." She looked up at me. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why didn't you tell me about the money? The properties? The company?" I thought for a long moment. "Because I needed you to understand the cost of what you did before you saw the scale of what you'd almost lost. If I had told you everything right away, you might have apologized, but you wouldn't have changed." She nodded slowly. "You're right. I didn't want to punish you. I wanted you to grow." She sat beside me and took my hand. "You didn't just help me get back on my feet. You taught me what it means to walk again." In that moment, I realized something else, something I hadn't been ready to admit even to myself. This was the climax, not of revenge, not of justice, but of return, the turning point I'd waited for, not the day she said sorry, not the day she came back. This day when she saw me not as the mother she'd once betrayed, but as a woman who'd chosen strength over bitterness, purpose over pity. We sat on the floor with Mark's box between us, sorting through the past, rethreading the pieces. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even emotional, not in the tear-streaked way people expect, but it was sacred. That night, as Dana went off to her shift, she paused at the door and turned to me. I used to hate this porch light. Why? Because it always felt like judgment, like I was being watched. And now? Now it feels like grace, like someone waiting for me no matter how late I come home. I watched her disappear into the night, and I knew we had crossed the midpoint. The story had changed. Now came the part where we rebuilt, together. Fall arrived with that quiet insistence only northern towns understand. Overnight, like someone pulling a soft wool blanket over the whole county. Leaves burned amber and red, and the breeze carried a whisper that reminded you things had changed, even if you hadn't noticed until now. And in my house, things had changed too. Dana no longer moved through rooms like a ghost. She had settled, not back into who she was, but into someone new. She packed her own lunches, left little reminder notes for herself, paid the utility bill early. Sometimes I watched her and thought, this is the daughter I never got to meet until now. I didn't say that out loud. Some truths are best folded into quiet observation. The shelter at the lake cottage, second porch, had already helped 6 women. Word had spread beyond our town. Donations came in envelopes with return addresses in places I'd never been. Boise, Shreveport, a small P.O. box from someone who signed only a friend who found her way back. One evening, Dana came home late, cheeks flushed from the cold, and placed her work ID on the counter. Mrs. Hawthorne offered me a full-time position, day hours, intake coordinator. That's great, I said, stirring the soup. You said you liked her. She said I reminded her of her sister, that I walk like someone who's learned something the hard way. I smiled. That's not a bad compliment. She sat across from me and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I want to do something, she said. Something big, and I need your help. I unfolded it. It was a draft proposal for a second porch scholarship fund. She wanted to help women leaving the shelter take certification courses, finish GEDs, enroll in nursing assistant training. She looked nervous. I don't want it to just be a place to sleep. I want it to be a place to launch. I think Mark would like that, I said. I want to name the fund after him. I blinked. That she would say his name, softly, respectfully, was enough to fill the whole room with memory. We created the Mark Carter Forward Fund, started with $10,000 from the trust. Clyde helped set up the paperwork, of course. Within a month, 3 women were enrolled in community classes. One was training to become a paralegal. Another wanted to be a welder. I thought pain would harden me, Dana said one night as we sat on the porch, but it made me soft in the right places. It opened me. You let it open you, I corrected. That week, something strange happened. A letter arrived. Foreign stamp, no return address. Dana opened it at the kitchen table while I made coffee. Her face paled. It's from Kyle, she said. I paused. What does he want? She scanned the letter, then again. Folded it shut. He says he's in a detention center, says he's changed, wants forgiveness. I waited. She dropped the letter into the wastebasket without a word. I used to think closure meant confrontation, she said. Now I know it just means choosing peace over curiosity. We never spoke of it again. Instead, we turned toward things that grew. That healed. Dana started mentoring one of the younger women from the shelter, Grace, 22, mother of a toddler, terrified of public speaking. Dana helped her practice for a job interview, helped her choose an outfit from the donation closet, even loaned her an old copy of The Glass Castle. I see myself in her, she said, but a version of myself I can still help shape. You're helping her shape herself. She smiled. Same thing in the end. One Sunday, we went to the lake cottage with a few volunteers to prepare for winter. Cleaned gutters, rolled up the hose. Dana raked leaves into soft hills while I set out plastic bins of canned goods and first aid kits inside. At some point, I looked out the window and saw her standing alone in the yard, the rake beside her, watching the lake in complete stillness. She looked peaceful. That night, we sat on the porch back home, candles flickering on the table, and Dana turned to me. "You know what I miss?" she said. "Not the condo, not the car, not the money." "What?" "I miss the version of myself who trusted too easily before I got bitter, before Kyle. I miss the part of me that believed people were mostly good." "That part of you isn't gone, Dana. It just has stronger walls now." She nodded. And then she said something that stayed with me. "I think forgiveness is less about them and more about making room inside you again, for joy, for future things." She was right. Forgiveness wasn't about Kyle, or even about her past mistakes. It was about letting the porch light shine for someone else, even when no one knew you were the one keeping it lit. Winter came early that year, not with a bang, but a slow, creeping frost that curled across windows before Thanksgiving. The first snow fell just days before Dana's final exams, and the town shifted into its usual holiday hush. Storefronts draped in cheap tinsel, radio stations switching to carols, whether we were ready or not. I kept the house simple. A string of white lights along the porch railing. The ceramic nativity Mark and I had bought on our 25th anniversary sat in its usual place on the mantel. No tree. Dana didn't ask why. She understood. Grief dulls the shine of some traditions, but some come back, quietly. Dana brought home a wreath one afternoon, pine and eucalyptus, handmade by a woman at the shelter. She said she used to decorate department store windows before her husband took everything, Dana said. Now she's starting a craft business. I bought this with my own money. We hung it on the front door together. It smelled like something hopeful. A week later, Clyde stopped by. He wore a ridiculous scarf, green and purple, homemade, and brought gingerbread cookies in a tin shaped like a sleigh. He handed me an envelope marked "Final Filing." "What's this?" I asked. "Final step in the trust transitions. All properties now officially under the Second Porch Foundation. Tax-exempt status approved. The cottage is secure. So is the scholarship fund." I sat down. The weight of what we'd built hit me all at once. "You did this," I said. "No," he replied. "You did." After he left, I poured myself a small glass of sherry and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the papers. The porch light glowed outside the window, casting a soft halo against the snow. Dana would be home soon from the shelter. Her shift had ended an hour ago. And then I noticed something odd. A figure walking up the street. Not Dana. Taller, broader. Not in a parka, just a dark coat. Slow, deliberate steps. He stopped at the end of the driveway. Didn't move for a moment. Just stared at the house. I stood slowly and moved toward the door, hand on the lock, heart suddenly louder in my chest. Then the figure turned, walked away, and disappeared into the dark. Dana arrived 10 minutes later, her cheeks red from the cold, a paper bag in hand. "There was someone outside," I said. "A man. I couldn't see his face." She stiffened. "Did he come to the door?" "No." She nodded once. "Might have been nothing." But the next morning, I found the letter, folded and wedged between the front door and the screen. My name, in Kyle's handwriting. I called Clyde immediately. "We need to talk." He met me at the house within the hour. Dana stayed silent while he read the note. It wasn't threatening, not overtly, but it was slippery, manipulative, the way only people like Kyle can write. Said he was back in the States, said he regretted everything, said he wanted to explain. Clyde folded the note carefully. "Do you want a restraining order?" Dana shook her head. "Not yet. I want to see if he means it." I turned sharply. "Dana!" She met my eyes. "Not to let him in, but to hear what he says. People like him trip over their lies when they think someone's listening." I didn't like it, but I trusted her. She wasn't the same woman he'd left in Prague. She had boundaries now, a spine. We set up a meeting, with Clyde present in a public space, recorded. Kyle showed up 15 minutes late, unshaven, wearing a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. Dana sat across from him at the bank's private conference room, arms folded, expression unreadable. He launched into apologies, vague, glossy, slippery. She listened, let him hang himself with his own rope. Every time he contradicted something, Clyde made a note. Every lie was a nail in his own coffin. Eventually, Kyle asked the real question. Can we be in touch, even just to talk? Dana's voice was calm. No. He looked surprised. But I'm trying. I don't care. Dana, you stole from me, lied to me, took years of my life and turned them into ash. You didn't break me, but you tried. So no, Kyle, we're done. He sat there, stunned. And then she stood, nodded once to Clyde, and walked out of the room. I was waiting in the lobby. We didn't say a word until we were back in the car. She exhaled slowly. I needed that, she said. I know, I said. She reached for my hand, squeezed it, just once. We drove home in silence. Back at the house, she lit the porch light herself. It glowed against the snow, steady as ever, a beacon, a boundary, an ending, and something just beginning. Christmas passed quietly. We exchanged small gifts. Dana gave me a scarf she'd knitted herself, crooked rose and all. I gave her a leather-bound planner with her name embossed in gold. For the woman who plans forward, I wrote on the inside cover. We didn't decorate much, no tree, no parties, just a quiet dinner, 2 mugs of cider, and a candle burning in the window. No sadness, no big declarations, just peace. It was more than enough. The week after New Year's, Dana received a letter from the local community college. I watched her open it at the kitchen table, holding her breath like she was reading a verdict. She smiled before she even read the second line. I got in, she said. Into what? The certification program, social work assistant, starts in March. I walked over and kissed the top of her head. You earned it, I said. That evening, she started sketching out a schedule. Work hours, class times, shelter volunteering. Her handwriting was neater than it used to be, intentional, like everything else about her these days. Later, after she'd gone to bed, I sat in the living room with a cup of tea and her old planner, the one she'd left behind in her rush to Europe the year before. I'd found it months ago, shoved in the back of her closet. It was full of big ideas. Pitch deck for Kyle's app. Plan trip to Mykonos. Yoga schedule. A life that was curated, not lived. The last page had a single line. Get mom into senior housing. February. I tore it out, folded it carefully, dropped it into the fireplace, and watched it curl to ash. Some plans don't deserve to live. February brought snowstorms and the kind of cold that cracks sidewalks, but it also brought new beginnings. Grace, the young woman Dana had mentored, got hired full-time at a dental office. Another woman from Second Porch moved into an apartment above the bakery. The community started to notice. Donations increased. A reporter from the local paper came by to do a story. Dana handled the interview. I stayed in the kitchen and listened from a distance. We call it Second Porch because a porch is a symbol, she said. It's where someone waits for you. It's the light that stays on. This place isn't about charity. It's about recognition. It's about saying, you're not too far gone to come home. The article ran on a Sunday. Front page, below the fold. Headline, A Porch Light for the Forgotten. The photo showed Dana in front of the lake cottage, bundled in her oversized coat, arms folded, snow at her feet. She looked steady, solid, whole. Angela from across the street knocked on my door with the paper in hand. I just had to say, she's something else now, she said. Whatever you did, Lillian. You raised her again. I smiled. No, she raised herself. I just left the light on. That night, Dana came home late. The interview had sparked a flurry of interest. Donors, volunteers, even someone from the state agency, asking about replicating the model elsewhere. She looked exhausted, but good. You proud of me? She asked, collapsing onto the sofa. Every day. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Do you think Dad knows? I think he planned for this, I said. Not the details, but the bones. We sat in silence for a long time. Then she said softly, "You know, I used to think the worst part of what I did was losing the money. And now I think it was losing your trust." I looked at her. "You didn't lose it. You broke it. But that's different." "How?" "Because broken things can be repaired. Lost things just drift away. And this, us, it's repaired. It's better," I said. "It's honest." That weekend, Dana took me to the lake, not the cottage, just the frozen shoreline nearby. We walked slowly, the snow crunching under our boots, our breath visible in front of us. She stopped at a bench overlooking the ice. "This is where Kyle told me we were leaving the country," she said. "Right here." "And you said yes?" "I didn't even blink." She sat, brushed snow off the bench beside her. "I think about that girl sometimes, the one who said yes." I sat beside her. "She's still part of you." Dana shook her head. "No, she's gone, and I'm not grieving her anymore." I reached for her hand and held it. The wind moved softly across the lake like a sigh. "I think she'd be proud," I said. She smiled. "Then maybe she didn't die. Maybe she just made way." We walked back to the car in silence, headlights already on against the falling dusk. Back home, Dana lit the porch light again, and for the first time since Mark died, I let myself believe that everything we'd lost hadn't been wasted. It had been the path to this, to her, to now. March arrived like it always does here, muddy and indecisive. Some days teased spring with warm breezes and sun on the porch railings, and others snapped back to sleet and gray skies like winter refusing to give up. But for Dana, March was a beginning. She started her certification classes the first Monday, left the house early, came back late, and still managed to do a load of laundry or prep a pot of chili. Her face looked tired, sure, but tired in that good way. The kind of tired that means you're building something real. One night, she came home with her backpack slung over one shoulder and a spiral notebook full of highlighted notes. "I had to stand up in front of class today and explain what the difference is between empathy and savior complex," she said. I poured her a cup of tea. "What did you say?" I said empathy is sitting beside someone while they're in the dark. Savior complex is dragging them toward your light and calling it kindness. I smiled. "That's exactly right." She sat down, stretched her legs. "Mrs. Bell, my instructor, asked where I learned that. I wanted to say, from my mom, but I thought it might sound childish. You could have said it. I'll say it next time." We kept working on Second Porch through it all. The wait list had grown to 14 women. We had to start screening more carefully, limiting stays to 90 days, rotating out based on milestones. It hurt saying no sometimes, but Dana handled it with compassion. "The light's always on," she told one applicant who didn't qualify. "It might not be this porch, but you're still seen." Then April came, and with it, our first fundraiser. It was a modest event. Folding chairs, crock pots full of soup, a small silent auction at the VFW hall. Dana wore a borrowed black dress and flats that pinched her feet. I baked lemon bars. Clyde handled the donor envelopes. We raised $4,000. Not a fortune, but enough to cover food, heat, and supplies for the cottage for 2 more months. As we were cleaning up, Dana stood by the door thanking each guest by name. One woman, gray hair in a braid, hands trembling with what I suspected was early Parkinson's, took Dana's hand in both of hers. "I stayed in that house," she said. 3 months. Got clean. Got my daughter back. Now I work at the co-op." Dana smiled, eyes welling. "I'm so glad." "No," the woman said firmly. "Don't be glad. Be proud. You didn't just help me. You didn't give up on me before I got the chance to not give up on myself." After everyone left, Dana sat alone at one of the folding tables, heels off, her knees pulled up, just watching the empty room. I sat beside her. "You okay?" "Yeah," she said. I never thought I'd be part of something good again." "Not really. "You're not part of it," I said. "You are it." She looked at me, then down at her hands. "I think I used to believe I was owed a good life, that I deserved comfort because I'd survived some hard things. But now I think it's the other way around. I think surviving gives you the responsibility to create comfort for someone else." I nodded. "That's what makes it sacred." We drove home in silence, tired and full of something more nourishing than soup. That night, I woke up around midnight, couldn't sleep, something buzzing in my chest like an unfinished sentence. I wandered to the kitchen and saw Dana sitting outside on the porch in her coat, a blanket over her lap. The porch light was on. I stepped out. "Cold," I said. "I like the cold," she replied. "It makes the light warmer." We sat together for a while. Then she said, "Mom, I want to tell my story, publicly, maybe at a recovery conference or a women's shelter network. I think it might help." "I think it already does." She hesitated. "Do you think it'll make people judge me?" "Of course." She looked over, surprised. "But that's the point," I said. "You're not hiding anymore. Let them judge. The ones who matter will see the whole arc." She smiled. "The arc?" "Yeah." That weekend, she submitted her proposal to speak at the Regional Shelter Advocacy Conference in August. They accepted her within the week. Her topic? The Power of Porch Light, Rebuilding After Betrayal. I read the draft of her speech. It began, "My name is Dana Carter. I used to lie for love. I used to steal from kindness. I used to be a ghost, but I found my way back. Because someone left the light on." That's when I knew. This wasn't just a recovery, it was a resurrection. May brought lilacs. They lined the side of the house like they always had, blooming in bunches so fragrant I could smell them before I even stepped outside. Mark used to cut them and leave a small jar on the table each spring, never saying a word about it, just a quiet offering of color and scent. That morning, I found Dana in the yard with pruning shears, clipping the first blooms of the season. She'd placed a mason jar on the porch rail, already half full. "You remembered," I said. She glanced up. "Of course. He always did it around Mother's Day." I took the jar inside and placed it on the kitchen table, next to the salt and pepper shakers. It looked right there, like a memory standing in sunlight. Later that week, Clyde called with an odd request. "You're not going to believe this," he said, "but Dana's been nominated for a civic award, community renewal recognition, something the mayor's office does for people who've made a measurable impact." I laughed. "Civic awards? My daughter?" "They want her to speak at the ceremony, just 5 minutes." I told him I'd pass along the message, but he already knew I would. When I told Dana, she froze. "I can't." "You can. What if people from town remember what I did?" "They will." Her shoulders slumped. "And then they'll see who you are now. They'll see what you've built." She thought about it overnight, then agreed. The ceremony was held at the town hall. Small stage, folding chairs, sandwich trays in the back, just like every other civic thing in this town. Dana wore a navy blouse, her hair pulled back in a simple bun. I sat in the front row next to Angela, who wore a brooch shaped like an owl and whispered, "Your girl's a phoenix." The mayor gave a long-winded intro, then stepped aside. Dana stood at the podium, hands steady. "I'm not going to give you a list of things I've done," she began, "because that's not the point. This award isn't for success. It's for change." She talked about mistakes without naming them, talked about darkness, about losing yourself and deciding to come back anyway. Change doesn't mean erasing the past, she said. It means refusing to be defined by it. When she finished, the room was still. Then came the applause, soft, then growing, filling the space with a kind of reverent noise. I clapped until my palms stung. Afterward, as we stood outside on the sidewalk, she looked at me with wide eyes. "I didn't shake," she said. "You were brilliant. I didn't even feel small. Because you're not." We went home and sat on the porch, watching twilight fall across the street. The porch light flickered on automatically. Dana leaned back in her chair, eyes closed. "You know what I think the hardest part was?" she asked. "What?" "Coming back here, living in the same house I tried to escape, facing the version of myself who would have gladly left you behind." I nodded. And now I don't want to leave. I want to grow more from this spot, from this view, from this chair. "Then stay," I said. "No one's asking you to go." But I knew better. Growth meant change, and change always meant movement. Sure enough, the next day, Dana brought it up. "Mom, I've been offered a job with the state. They want to expand the second porch model into 2 other counties." "That's wonderful," I said. "It means moving. Not far, just 2 hours. But I'd have to be there during the week." I didn't speak. I'd come home weekends. We'd still see each other. "Dana," I said gently, "you don't need to explain. This is what it was all for." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I'm scared." "You'll be fine. And you?" "I've been fine for a long time. I just finally get to be proud while doing it." She moved in early June. Not far, just far enough to make coming home mean something. We boxed up her clothes, her books, her growing collection of thank you notes from the women she'd helped. The morning she left, she stood on the porch with her suitcase, hands shaking just a little. "I don't know how to say goodbye." "You're not," I said. "You're saying thank you." She nodded. "Then thank you. For not shutting the door when I slammed it. For waiting." I hugged her. "For leaving the porch light on," I said. She smiled. "Always." She drove off, her taillights disappearing down the hill toward Route 27. The sun was barely up. I went inside, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table with the lilacs still blooming in their jar, and when I turned, I saw it. The porch light still burning, right where it belonged. The house was quiet again, not empty, just still. I'd grown used to the rhythm of another person's footsteps, Dana's humming in the bathroom, the occasional clink of her mug in the sink. Now there were only the old sounds, the heater clicking to life in the mornings, the creak of the porch floorboards when I stepped out for the mail, the distant hum of the neighbor's lawnmower. She called every Sunday evening without fail. "Hi, Mom," she'd say, "just checking in." She told me about her new apartment, small, sunlit, with a balcony that looked out over a park. She had 2 folding chairs and a ficus she named Mark, because he seemed steady. I laughed harder at that than I had in months. The second porch expansion moved fast. Too fast, she said some days. Bureaucracy was slower than healing, and sometimes she felt like she was pushing boulders uphill. But then I remember what it felt like to wake up and feel useful, she told me, and I know I'm doing what I meant to do. She came home every other weekend, still brought groceries, still folded laundry without being asked. Once, I found a note tucked into the fridge under the butter dish. "Don't forget to eat something green today, D." In July, I drove out to visit her. Her apartment was modest but warm, books stacked in little towers along the walls, mismatched mugs on open shelves, a poster that read, "Repair is a form of resistance." We sat on the balcony and drank tea as cicadas buzzed in the trees. She looked rested, older maybe, but in that good way, where age settles into a face like wisdom rather than wear. "You ever think about dating again?" I asked, surprising both of us. Dana snorted. "God, no, I'm still dating myself. It's going pretty well, though. I even take me out for ice cream." Anyone lucky would be wise to try. She leaned her head against the railing. "You? Me what? You ever think about it?" "No, Mark was my story. That book's closed." She nodded, not with sadness, but with understanding. We stayed there until dusk, watching the sky pinken, listening to the town wind down. When I left, she walked me to the car. "Drive safe," she said. "Call when you get in." "Of course." And then she did something I hadn't expected. She handed me a small box. Inside, a key. "To my apartment," she said, "just in case, for emergencies, or if you just want to visit without asking." I looked at her. "Are we there now?" "I think we've been there a while." Back home, I added the key to my ring. Didn't label it, didn't need to. In August, she gave her speech at the regional conference. I watched it online, her voice calm, sure. She spoke without notes. "Rebuilding after betrayal isn't about finding your old self," she said. "It's about building someone new with the parts that survived." I played that sentence back twice. Later, she sent me a photo of her standing between two state officials, smiling with her certificate in hand. "This one's for you," her text read, "for every time you believed when I didn't." I saved it to my desktop. September came with early winds and the first yellow leaves curling at the edge of the maple trees. I pulled the summer flowers from the porch boxes and planted mums again, burnt orange, the way Mark liked them. I found myself reaching for the notebook one evening, the one I hadn't written in for months. I'd left off around page 16. I opened it to a blank page. Page 17. Dana, settled, strong, still calling every Sunday. Second porch, expanding, 3 locations by year's end. Me, content. Porch lights still on. No revenge needed. Truth was louder. I closed the book. The final phase of her undoing hadn't been punishment. It had been truth. That was the difference between revenge and justice. Revenge is about pain. Justice is about alignment, about setting things right, then letting go. That evening, I poured a glass of wine and sat on the porch. The street was quiet. A few porch lights twinkled on. Someone's screen door creaked open in the distance. And then a car I didn't recognize pulled up to the curb. A young woman stepped out, early 20s maybe, hair tied back, jeans and a hoodie. She stood there a moment, then approached the porch steps. "Hi," she said. "Are you Lillian?" "I am." "My name's Kara," I was told. Someone at the shelter said I could find you here, that you could help me. Or point me towards someone who could. I stood, smiled. "Come on up." She looked uncertain. Her eyes flicked to the porch light, then back to me. "I wasn't sure it would still be on," she said. "It always is," I told her. "That's kind of the point." I poured her a cup of tea, listened to her story, let her speak until she was done. Another soul at the edge, reaching for the glow, and once again I knew we were never meant to hoard our healing. We're meant to pass it on, porch light to porch light, one return at a time. Kara stayed for tea, then came again the following afternoon. She was skittish at first, apologizing for taking up space, for talking too much, for not making sense. But I've learned to listen between the lines. Trauma isn't always about what someone says. It's how they pause, where they glance, what they skip. She was 24, grew up 2 towns over, had just left a man who wasn't always mean, but sometimes mean enough. She carried everything she owned in a canvas duffel that looked like it had seen one too many bus station benches. "I don't need a bed," she insisted, "just somewhere to be for a little while." I gave her the address to the cottage, told her to meet Dana there the next day at noon. "She's in charge of intake now," I explained. "It's her place more than mine." Kara blinked. "Your daughter? The one they wrote about in the paper?" "That's the one." She looked down, embarrassed. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not," I said. "You're a person." She nodded, slow, like she didn't quite believe me yet. But the next day, she showed up. Dana texted me a photo of them sitting on the back porch of the cottage, Kara holding a steaming mug, Dana pointing out across the lake. "She's got something," Dana wrote. "I can feel it." The rotation of women continued. The second cottage opened just outside of Fulton in October. The third was under renovation. Dana drove between counties twice a week now, coordinating volunteers, helping draft intake policy, and organizing workshops. She started calling the model porch-based recovery, said the image helped people more than abstract terms ever did. Meanwhile, I found myself busier than expected, not just because of the traffic coming to my door, but because something had awakened in me too. For years after Mark died, and especially after Dana left, I'd gone small, shrunk into a corner of myself. Now I found I had things to say, things to share. I began writing, not a memoir, nothing formal, just short reflections, stories, small lessons disguised as memories. I printed a few and shared them with Clyde. "You know," he said, flipping through them one day, "this could be a book." I laughed. "I'm a retired teacher and part-time grandmother, not a writer." "You're a porch keeper," he said, "and the world needs more of those." So I kept writing. In early November, I got a letter from a woman named Carol in Michigan. She'd heard about Second Porch through a cousin and wanted to start something similar in her county. Enclosed was a check for $500 and a handwritten note. "For the light you left on, thank you. I'm going to pass it forward." That's when I realized something important. This thing Dana had built, it wasn't hers anymore. It wasn't even ours. It belonged to the women, the ones who came back, the ones who still might. That Thanksgiving, we hosted dinner at the Lake Cottage for current residents and alumni. Dana roasted a turkey the size of a small dog. I made sweet potato casserole with the marshmallows slightly burnt on top, just the way Mark hated and Dana loved. Kara was there, quieter now, but sturdier. She'd found a part-time job at the library, started journaling, bought herself a coat from the consignment store that fit properly. After dinner, as the women washed dishes and music played softly from a speaker in the corner, Dana stood by the fireplace and raised her glass. "I don't know what to say, except, 'Thank you,' she said, 'to all of you. You remind me every day that coming back is possible. That grace isn't a one-time gift, it's a posture.'" They toasted with cider and laughter. Later, I stepped outside to get some air. The lake shimmered dark under a waxing moon. Dana came out and stood beside me. "You did good, kid," I said. She smiled. "They did good." A pause. Then quietly, "I've been thinking about writing, too." "Oh? Not speeches, not applications, just words, maybe stories, like you." "You should." "I'm scared." "Do it anyway." She nodded. "I want to write about the dark, but also about the light, about how both can live in the same house, on the same porch. That's the only kind of truth worth writing." We stood there a while, side by side. Then she turned to me. "Mom, I think I'm ready to forgive myself." I met her eyes. "You already have." "No," she said. "I'm ready now, for real. And I want to do something to mark it." "Like what?" "Something permanent." She wouldn't say what, not yet, but I could feel it in her voice. Something shifting, something closing, not like a door slammed, more like one gently latched with the light still glowing behind it. Dana didn't tell me what the something permanent was right away, but I could see it working behind her eyes, that kind of private resolve you only get when a part of you has finally turned the page. She was quieter that week, not withdrawn, just thoughtful. Like her body was here, but her mind was drawing blueprints somewhere else. Saturday morning, I came into the kitchen to find her hunched over a legal pad, scribbling notes. She looked up. "Can I borrow the car?" "Where are you going?" She hesitated. "You'll see." She was gone most of the day. When she returned, her coat smelled like sawdust and paint. There was something in her hands, flat, wrapped in brown craft paper. She didn't hand it to me, just placed it on the counter and said, "Tomorrow at the cottage." I didn't press. The next afternoon, we drove out together. It had snowed lightly the night before, and the air was sharp, the kind that wakes your lungs with the first breath. The lake cottage stood steady and familiar. 2 women were in the kitchen, prepping for the new intake. I waved. Dana led me to the porch. She stood where the welcome mat used to be. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small toolkit. "Help me?" she said. We worked in silence, measuring, drilling. She let me hold the level. She did the mounting. When it was done, we stepped back. A wooden sign, hand-carved, stained a warm chestnut brown. The Porch Light Project, founded in forgiveness. Below it, in honor of Mark Carter, who taught us how to come home. I reached out and touched the wood. "You made this?" "Commissioned it," she said. "Local artist. I just gave her the words." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "It's perfect." Dana looked up at the porch light. It clicked on as dusk fell. "It's never gone out," she said. "No," I agreed. "It hasn't." We went inside, sat in the kitchen while one of the women played music from her phone, something gentle and wordless. Dana leaned forward, elbows on the table. "I've been thinking," she said, "about legacy." I nodded, letting her speak. "I used to think it meant money, buildings, your name on something permanent. But now, I think it's more like ripples. It's the people who do something because of something you once said, or did, or survived." "I like that." "Then you have a big legacy, Mom." I smiled. "You're part of it." She went home that night, back to her town, her apartment, her ficus named Mark. I stayed at the cottage. There was something about sleeping there now that soothed me. The bedroom smelled like lavender and lake water and second chances. I woke before dawn, made coffee, and sat on the porch wrapped in a quilt. The sign glowed softly in the porch light. I watched the sun rise behind it, and for a moment, everything felt still, like a story settling into its final chapter. When I got home that afternoon, there was a letter in the mailbox. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. Kyle. I stood on the porch for a long moment, then brought it inside and opened it at the kitchen table. It was short. 3 sentences. "I've decided not to contact Dana again. She's clearly moved on, and I respect that. Thank you for not turning her against me, even when you could have." I folded it, placed it in the firebox, and didn't mention it to Dana. That part of the story had ended. Some closures need no audience. The rest of fall passed with its usual grace. Golden light through thinning trees, birds starting their long retreat south, the smell of cinnamon in every grocery store. Dana and I saw each other every few weeks. Sometimes she'd drop in on a Tuesday just to borrow a book or return a casserole dish. Sometimes I'd visit her and we'd walk through the farmer's market like 2 old friends. We didn't talk much about the past anymore. Not because it didn't matter, but because we didn't need to. We'd already grown something from it. One morning, I found an envelope on my front step. No postage. Hand-delivered. Inside was a photo. Kara, standing on the back porch of the cottage, holding a set of apartment keys and smiling like someone who'd just remembered how. Below it, a note in block letters. "I'm moving into my own place today. I got a job at the food co-op. I never would have done this if you hadn't left the light on. Love, Kara." I added the photo to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a pear. Then I poured myself coffee and opened the notebook again. Page 18. Kara moved out. Second porch is stable. Funded for another year. Dana's planning to write. I think I am too. The light still burns. Outside, a car passed slowly down the street. Somewhere, another woman was probably looking for her own porch, her own way back. And I was here, waiting. Not because I owed her anything, but because this is what you do when you've been forgiven. You make room. It was the first snow of December when Dana called. Not the flurry kind, the real one. Fat flakes falling slow, coating everything in a hush. I just finished salting the porch steps when the phone rang. "Mom," she said, her voice lighter than I'd heard it in months. "I've been asked to give a keynote at the statewide Women's Recovery Summit in March." "That's incredible. They want me to talk about reintegration, what it means to come home after screwing up everything." "You've got the credentials," she laughed. It's not lost on me how far that phrase used to hurt. What made it stop hurting? "You," she said. "You let me come back, but you didn't erase what I did. That was the difference. You didn't pretend it never happened. You just stayed." I sat down at the kitchen table, wiping the snow from my sleeves. "And now you're telling the story." She paused, then quieter. "I think I'm finally telling the right story." That landed deep, because there had been other versions, of course. The one she told Kyle, the one she told herself, the version that said she was a victim, or a romantic, or just unlucky. All those drafts had protected her for a while, but none of them healed her. Only the truth did. That weekend, she came home, not to stay, just to rest. She brought her laptop, 2 notebooks, and a bag of oranges. Said they helped her think. We sat on the porch together with our mugs steaming and our legs wrapped in old wool blankets. "I've been going back through my journals," she said, "trying to trace when the shift happened. And I think it was when I stopped needing to be rescued." I nodded. "That's always the moment." She turned to me, a strange smile on her face. "I found the note I left you, the one on the fridge before I flew to Prague." My stomach tightened. I remembered it well. 3 lines, all sharp. "I'm sorry, but this life doesn't fit me anymore. I need more. I need air." "I hated you for writing that," I said. "I hated me too. Do you still feel that way? About needing more?" She looked out at the trees, bare and skeletal against the gray sky. "No," she said. "Now I just need real." That night, we lit candles on the windowsill, not for tradition, just because the house felt soft and still, and light belongs in quiet places. She left early the next morning, snow still clinging to her windshield. I waved from the porch like always. She honked once as she pulled away. Inside, I picked up one of the notebooks she'd left behind. Not the speech, just a plain one, filled with questions. On one page, what does it mean to stay? What does it mean to go? How do we know which kind of leaving is healing and which is just escape? I wrote her a note on the margin. "You don't always know, but one leaves a scar and the other leaves a root." She texted later that day. "Got your note. That line, I think I'm going to end my talk with it." By mid-January, things settled into a rhythm again. The porch got shoveled. The thermostat groaned. Angela came by to gossip. Life, ordinary and sacred. Then one morning, Dana called with a tremble in her voice. "Mom, I just got offered a fellowship." I stood still. "A what?" "Full year, funded, research and program development for transitional housing models in Vermont." "Vermont. Will you take it?" "I think I have to," she said. "Then you should." "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know I'm supposed to be ready, but it feels like leaving again. Really leaving. This isn't escape, Dana. It's expansion." She let that settle, then said, "Will you come visit?" "Of course." She laughed through a sniffle. "You'll hate the cold." "I already hate the cold." Her fellowship began in March. She'd move at the end of February. That gave us 6 more weekends, 2 Sunday dinners, 1 Valentine's breakfast, and a long talk we didn't know would be the last on this porch for a while. She brought Kara by before she left. Kara had a new haircut, new job, a steadier voice. "She's going to be house coordinator while I'm gone," Dana said. "If you need anything, she's your girl." Kara smiled. "I owe you 1,000 lights. This is how I pay one back." I hugged her, told her to keep the key on a separate ring so it wouldn't get lost. Then I turned to Dana. "You know this isn't goodbye." "I know," she said, "but it still feels like leaving." "That's okay, as long as it's leaving, well." She nodded, then handed me a sealed envelope. "Don't open this until after I go," she said. "Promise." I promised. She left the next morning. I didn't cry. Not right away. I just stood on the porch, coffee cooling in my hand, watching the car disappear down the hill again, just like that first time and all the times in between. But this time, the light didn't feel like a wound. It felt like a map. I waited 2 days to open the envelope, not out of fear, just reverence. It sat on the mantel, untouched, beside the old ceramic nativity and a small glass jar where I'd started saving spare change again. It reminded me of being young and poor, back before Dana was born, when every dollar had a job. There was something honest in that discipline, choosing what mattered. On the 3rd morning, I made tea, sat down in the good armchair, and opened her letter. It wasn't long, just a page. Handwritten, no corrections. "Mom, I wanted to leave you something in words because I know how much you believe in their weight. There were 100 ways to say thank you, but none of them felt strong enough. So here's the best I've got. You gave me a second chance when you didn't have to. You believed in my goodness even when I couldn't find it. You kept the porch light on, not as a rescue, but as a reminder that I was still welcome in this world. I will carry that light with me, wherever I go. I've added you as co-author on the Porch Light Project documents. I didn't tell you before because I knew you'd argue, but you shaped this as much as I did, maybe more. It's yours as much as it's mine. With love, always Dana. I sat with that letter for a long time, read it twice, then folded it neatly and tucked it into the notebook on page 19. That day, I went out to the lake cottage. Kara was there, standing on the porch with a clipboard and a look of practiced calm. Just did the new intake, she said. 2 women. One brought a daughter, 6 years old. How are they settling in? Cautiously, but they'll get there. I walked around the property. The snow was melting, earth showing in soft, muddy patches. A breeze stirred the chimes Mark had hung the year before he passed. Inside, the place looked the same, clean, quiet, lived in. Kara pointed out new additions, a lending library, a corkboard of job postings, a gratitude wall with pinned-up notes. I remembered how to sleep here. I'm learning to ask for help. My son laughs again. In the corner, I noticed a worn blue hoodie hanging on a hook. It had belonged to one of the earliest women, I was sure of it. They often left something behind when they moved on. A small artifact, a symbol. We sat for a while near the fireplace. You know what I think? Kara said, stirring her tea. What? I think healing doesn't erase what happened. It just gives it a quieter seat at the table. That's wise, I said. I had a good teacher. She smiled, and I saw a little flash of Dana in her expression. Not in the features, but the carriage. The strength that comes when you've rebuilt yourself by hand. That night, back home, I opened a new page in the notebook. Page 20. Kara. Steady, strong. Dana, in Vermont. Learning, expanding. Me, not waiting anymore. Holding, witnessing, passing it on. Then I made a call to the woman in Michigan, Carol, who'd written all those months ago. She'd started her own version of Second Porch with 2 volunteers and a borrowed farmhouse. How's it going? I asked. Slow but real, she said. 1 woman, then another, then 2 more. You're building something. She paused. I was wondering if you'd ever come visit, maybe do a talk, share how it started. I didn't hesitate. I'd love to. I hung up and looked out the window. The porch light was on, as always, but it no longer felt like something I kept lit for someone else. Now it was a signal to me. A soft, steady promise that the past no longer ruled the air in this house. Dana didn't live here anymore, but the life she and I built, it did. One night in late February, I dreamed of Mark. He was sitting on the porch, whittling a stick, humming something low. I sat beside him in the dream. She's okay now, I told him. I know, he said without looking up. You'd be proud. He smiled. So are you. I woke up with tears on my cheeks and the first birdsong of spring outside the window. I made coffee, swept the porch, and when the sun crested over the neighbor's roof, I stood at the edge of the step and took a breath. Something had ended, and something else, I knew, was just beginning. Spring arrived soft and early that year. No late frost, no cruel April tricks, just a slow unfurling of buds along the maple limbs and the smell of damp earth rising through the mornings. I swapped out the heavy quilts for lighter ones, aired the house, let the breeze move through each room like a blessing. Dana called often, but the tone had shifted. Not just updates anymore. Now it was ideas, collaborations, a possible book deal in early talks. She'd started mentoring 2 other fellows and said it felt like watching her own old self through a mirror. I keep wanting to tell them not to rush the healing, she said, but I remember how impatient I was, how desperate I was to be fixed. No one's fixed, I told her, just forming and reforming. Like sea glass, she said. Exactly. We made a plan for her to come back in June for a few days, just to visit. She said she wanted to walk the neighborhood again, eat at the diner, maybe sit on the porch and read quietly the way we used to. "Do you miss it?" I asked. "Not in the way I thought I would," she said. "I miss the rhythm. I miss you, but I'm not aching for it. I think that's a good sign." It was. Kara stopped by weekly now, sometimes just for a cup of tea. She'd begun dating someone, a gentle man who worked at the co-op and knew how to cook rice without burning it. That was her first compliment about him, said a lot. "I never thought I'd care about the small things," she said once, stirring sugar into her mug. "Now I think they're the only things that matter." One evening, I walked the neighborhood just before dusk. Everything looked ordinary. Mailboxes askew, kids on bikes, a sprinkler throwing rainbows onto a patchy lawn. But there was something new in the air. Maybe just the way light filtered through the trees, or maybe just me, finally clear-eyed. When I got home, I sat on the porch and thumbed through the notebook. Page 21 was blank. I didn't know what to write, and that felt like the right place to be. A few days later, Clyde called. "You've been quiet," he said. "Just content." He laughed. "You used to call that suspicious. Turns out, peace is louder than I thought." We talked a while. He mentioned retirement, maybe a trip to the coast with his sister. I told him he'd earned it 10 times over. That weekend, I visited the lake cottage alone. No one was scheduled to arrive for 2 more days, and the place was empty but humming, like a room that had hosted stories and still held echoes of them in the corners. I made a pot of coffee, sat on the porch with the chimes clinking faintly in the breeze, and then I saw her, not Dana, a woman, maybe late 30s, walking slowly along the path toward the water. She had that look, shoulders a little hunched, a paper bag clutched to her side, shoes worn at the heel. She didn't see me, just walked to the edge of the lake, stood there for a moment, then sat down cross-legged in the grass. I didn't interrupt, didn't offer help, just watched her breathe in the space. Sometimes the porch light doesn't need to guide. Sometimes it just needs to exist, to remind someone they haven't been forgotten. That evening, I finally wrote in the notebook again. Page 21. New arrival soon. Her name is Marcy. Kara is thriving. Dana is writing. I am still here, still holding. The porch is more than a house. It's a covenant. A few days later, I got a package in the mail, return address, Vermont. Inside was a thin, bound galley of pages, a manuscript. Title page read, "The Porchlight Project, Stories of Return and Rebuilding," by Dana Carter, with contributions by Lillian Carter. I ran my fingers over the cover. No foreword, no dedication. Just a handwritten note slipped inside. For everyone who thought they were too far gone, for the porch that waited anyway. I placed the manuscript on the side table, next to the salt and pepper shakers and the half-wilted lilacs I hadn't thrown out yet. Then I stepped out onto the porch and turned the light on early, just because, just in case. The day Dana came home again, the sky was the kind of blue that feels deliberate, not just clear, but tender, almost like it knew something needed witnessing. She arrived just past noon, suitcase in tow, hair longer than it had been in years. She looked older, yes, but more like herself than I'd ever seen, fully grown into the person she'd fought to become. "Hi, Mom," she said, stepping onto the porch. I hugged her, held on maybe a second longer than I meant to. We spent the afternoon quietly, just talking, making lunch, rearranging the books on the living room shelf. She brought a folder with early proofs of the book, including a mock-up for the cover. Simple, clean, a front porch lit up under stars. "There's a quote on the back," she said. "Yours." She handed it to me. "You don't have to be whole to come home, just willing. LC. I touched the corner of the page like it might dissolve. Later, we walked the neighborhood. Past the old post office, the bakery, the empty lot where the hardware store used to stand. Dana waved to people. Some waved back with recognition, some with that cautious friendliness you extend to faces you've half forgotten. Back home, we made soup. Real soup, not the canned kind we used to settle for. She sliced vegetables while I stirred. The radio hummed softly in the background, playing a jazz song neither of us knew, but both of us liked. We ate on the porch, wrapped in blankets, knees touching under the table. "Do you ever wonder if the worst things are what gave us this?" she asked. "I don't wonder," I said. "I know they did." She nodded slowly. "That doesn't mean I'd choose it again," she said. "Of course not. But I'd choose where we are now, every time." We sat until the bowls were empty and the sun dipped low. Then Dana stood, walked to the edge of the porch, and looked down the street like she was expecting someone. "What?" I asked. She shook her head. "Nothing. Just remembering what it used to feel like, thinking someone would come save me. And now? Now I know I'm the one who shows up. For myself, for others." She turned back and smiled. "Especially for the ones who don't believe yet." I smiled too. After she went to bed, I stayed up. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty. It was full, not with noise, but with proof, of change, of forgiveness, of the hard, unseen labor it takes to become someone better. I walked through each room, touched the places where grief had once lived, where hope had cracked open the walls. In the kitchen, I saw the envelope again, the one Dana had given me months ago with the letter inside. I opened it one more time, not to reread, just to feel its weight. Then I returned it to the notebook. Page 22. The light is still on. The porch is still here. She came back. She left again. But now I know there's nothing left to fix, only more to welcome. Outside, the stars were blinking on one by one. I stepped onto the porch and sat down in Mark's old chair, the one with the worn armrests and the loose joint I'd never bothered to repair. The air was cool, but not cold. I could hear the wind move gently through the trees, and there, humming quietly above the steps, the porch light glowed, not just for Dana, not just for me, but for anyone still on the road, anyone unsure, anyone who needed to know. There's still a place for you. There's still a way back. You are not too far gone. Not yet. Not ever. The light is still on. The end. Thank you for reading. If this story resonated with you, consider sharing it or letting someone else know they're not alone. The porch light stays on.